Well, hello. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Smarten show. As you can see, this is not Darryl Milena Weinberg tonight. I just wanted to let everyone know that Darryl is not feeling well, but I will be here speaking with our guest, Christina Fernandez. And if you have seen a previous show of ours, Christina was here speaking with us about a big event that she was planning for families in the Waterloo region. And we've asked her tonight to come back and kind of let us know how it went and, what kind of things have come up since then, because um, we are here discussing at the Smarten Up show issues and questions about education, parenting, and of course, we add biblical perspective to that as well. But our concern is really to speak to families of all families out there that would be willing to listen and are really interested in finding out more. So just to let you know, we are on the Messianic Lamb video network, but you always also can find the show on the Smarten Up YouTube channel. And we also have School Pods Canada Facebook group. So with all that introduction, I want to officially say hello, Christina. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me on again.
Yes. So I know that it was a busy time for you planning. And you know what? Anyone who, puts events together and tries to organize the community together finds out that it takes a lot of work, but there's a lot of rewards and a lot of good things come out of that effort.
So many good things. I mean, it just the unfolding of all of it was so powerful. I mean, just people coming together, people stepping up and, providing resources, whether it's prints, whether it's the sign outside for people to find it, whether it's the church that allowed us to use the space. People like last minute kind of thinking about things where like the stage is huge, like you saw the stage, like it was so massive, and we're like, oh, like what do we do we put plants on here? It was a very last minute kind of thing, where community members were like, I can help with that, and they put some props up there. And so just amazing. Like we had a budget of $0, just totally grassroots, people coming together for the greater good, knowing that it's important. And I think that, that's kind of what we wanted most out of the event, was for people to walk away just kind of reflecting on why did they come? Like what made them come through those doors on a Monday night, first day back at school after the holiday. So it was January 8th, right? We knew there was a snowstorm coming. Like just, and we had such a tremendous turnout. Like we had people, I don't know if you noticed, but there were the doors were propped open and people were watching from the foyer, right? Like just amazing. Yes. And that's what we wanted people to kind of walk away, regardless of, and that's something I said for people to realize. I thanked people for coming out on a cold Monday night, first day back, right? But despite all that, also the fact that they were going to be learning some things that might make them uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I really commend people for being able to do now, is realizing I might hear something that might make me need to take some action. And life is stacked. Like I'm at full capacity. It's hard enough to get the things in that I want to need to get done. And to put this on top of it is not fun, right? And we're at a point now where we just, if you got to be doing something, right? And it's going to look different for everyone. And that's the thing, like, we're speaking here on a podcast, and it doesn't mean that that's what people need to do in order to make a difference, right? Everyone's got a place in this, and that's kind of what we wanted people to reflect on as they left. Like, why am I here? Like, do I need support with this? Do I need to find some people who could help me through what I'm going through with all of this? Can I lend some support in some way? Do I have extra resources, whether it be time or energy or finances? Or because some people, they know that they don't have the time or energy, but they've got some finances to help support the cause. And so we all have a different place. Like some people are here to help people heal through this, right? But that's another kind of different thing that came up while we were planning the event as well, and knowing all of the supports that we have out there. Do you know someone who knows someone, right? Like, do you got a guy that might be able to help with whether it's space for kids to be able to utilize, to have a space for school, education that isn't indoctrination, and do you have a printing company that you can help us with resources? Like just all those things that kind of outside of the box, thinking of where we fit in individually, coming together and unifying to make a difference.
Oh, absolutely. And I know throughout the evening, you mentioned many times, and even I'm sitting here talking with you, and we are by no means professional, either broadcasters or professional. And we're just not professional in anything in the initiative we're doing, but we're passionate about it. And it's learn as you go kind of thing. And with the passion, you become even better at something than if it's something you feel like you have to do. The fact that people want to do things, and even though, like you said, the turnout was amazing, and you know what, your stage setup, I didn't know it was a last minute. I thought it was, wow, that was so well put together. And just the creativity of the community coming out, and the gifting and the talents coming out to contribute was amazing. And you know what, the diversity of perspectives that was presented also at that event was really appreciated, because I've said at many shows that Canada, what we are really proud of is the fact that we are a country of diversity, right? That still functions so well together, because everybody has come to this country, or your family, or have come for opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely.
My apologies.
That's okay.
And so, of course, the reason we did come together to this event for Waterloo region is obviously because we have come to understand that something needs to be done when it comes to our children's education, to our families' decisions. And you know what? Some people were there to find out how to strengthen and how to be influenced and change the system that already exists, right? Some people wanted to do that. Some people wanted to opt out of the system and create something new and diverse, and that was just beautiful as well. And I was actually quite amazed at the perspectives, and was very inspiring, because all that came through all the speakers with the passion and the love that they have for what they do, and for the mission that they've put before themselves, or has been put before them. And I know my husband Darryl was very inspired, by the speakers, and he was just he got so passionate even during his speech, because he said, yes, we are passionate people who can make a difference, who can change. And yes, and just the information that what is happening. And listen, the people who are not concerned about what's happening, people who are okay with what is happening in the schools, the changes are taking place, they probably weren't there that evening. It was probably people who thought, something needs to change. They're driven by the desire for change and really doing the best for their children, because we have a public education system that is offered to us, and as families are thinking, well, is there something that reflects my values better? Because it is difficult with a public education system to reflect the values of everyone, because it's just it's just a system that is put in place to do the best it can do. Uh, but then the people, like the parents like you and I, people, businesses, or people who are passionate about the next generation, now they're coming forward and saying, hey, I can do something different. I can provide something else. So to me, that was inspirational. And yes, the fact that it was through a Canadian winter evening that everybody was there, it was amazing. But you know what? That shows, there is a Canadian spirit out there that comes out, that no matter what the conditions, we are going to step forward. And it's really not to help ourselves, but to see how we can incorporate ourselves in a community with like-minded people. And even if there's diversity of ideas in the room, you still see what part you can do. And so that was a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I know that, yeah, well, maybe we can go over of some of the things that stood out throughout the evening, but I know afterwards you also sent an email and kind of asking people who attended, who are part of it, some thoughts and ideas. And so that is the growth process, when we come in, participate, and then we think, okay, so what are we doing? What went well? What can we do better? What can we do more of? So that is wonderful that you have been wonderful at communicating with everyone, to really encouraging them to participate, because that's one thing we're not used to doing, right? We've had this public education system, and we haven't had to make many decisions, right, up to this point. So a lot of parents are finding, hey, this is new. I need to learn more, and I am seeing this. So let's just talk about what are some highlights that stood out from the presentation that evening, other than just the amazing show of like the presence of everyone there and the excitement. What were some things that you think were highlights of the evening from your
Yeah.
perspective?
Yeah, I mean, a lot stands out even while you're talking about community, and that's something that is quite glaring to me now, is that sense of community that we've been lacking. We've been missing that in our society. We think so globally, right? Community is not the same as network. We think, even when, thinking of my kids and them having their STEAM fair, like it's about global, and what are we doing? Like, how do you protect the earth? And we do very little within our own local communities, knowing one another, working with each other to build something. If we all took care of our communities, we'd all be good, right?
Yeah.
But everyone's looking for that bigger thing, that thing that gives them a name, and I think that's so ego driven, and it's so, like, it's not who we are, what we're meant to do. We're meant to be a village together. What a difference. Like, my parents are from Portugal, and what a difference, like, in the Azores, so small island. And when you go through the villa, people know who my cousins are, right? Like, they know who they are, and they know what they're good for. They're good at the kind of, like, what they do for the community, right? And we bump shoulders with people in our local grocery store and don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And I think we need a little bit more of that, and that's something that was very apparent to me, of how beautiful it was for community. And that's the thirst that I hear from so many people who, they didn't know that there was a community of people working together on this. I thought I was alone. I've been demoralized. I didn't have any hope. Even calling the vendors when we talked. So the vendors were picked by people, parents of Waterloo region. We kind of asked around, who do you know who's already serving our children in this way, who is already providing space for them, that is high education without the indoctrination, who are they, where can we find them? And so that's the referrals that we got. And so we called them up, and the amount of people who are just like, oh, finally we're doing something like this. We've been needing this for years. And just kind of like them expressing how hopeless they've been feeling, But then when they hear like, what, I didn't know there was a community of parents doing all of that, right? And so we kind of really, we touched upon it a little bit at the event, but in terms of the things that we're doing within the publicly funded school systems in order to build awareness of parents, to make sure that you're being informed of the kind of education that your kids are getting, you know, things that you can do to go in front of the board and delegate. The amount of people who know about the board is so few, right? And I was one of those people. And so as we empower people to get involved in the school system, I truly believe that's where they're going to start seeing, okay, now I'm making an informed decision. Now I'm realizing this isn't what I want for my kids. And that won't be for everyone. And that's not a judgment call either. Like, I'm not here to tell you what you need for your family. You know, there's going to be circumstances where the publicly funded school system, maybe that is the best option for you. Well, I'm not here to tell you one way or the other. What I do encourage people to do is to listen to what that is and to follow through. Mm-hmm. So whatever happens to be, wherever that pull is for people, that they really follow through with what they're hearing, that they need to be doing. And like I said, that's going to be different for everyone, and it's not a judgment call. I would never judge someone if it looks different for them as it does for me. That doesn't mean they're doing it wrong and I'm doing it right. It's going to be different for everyone. But that sense of community was a big one for me, and the demoralization that people are feeling, you know, that hopelessness of, I feel like it's all by design, you know. When we say the school system really is made for a certain purpose. I truly believe that, and it's to me, I don't see, as it stands, it's not to help kids flourish. It's to dumb us down and keep us obedient to you know, the powers that be, so that they can continue taking control of, and whether that's with good intentions, like that's not some conspiracy theory, because if you think about a government and you think about how we would imagine that the government is here to serve and to protect and to make life better for us, right? And to govern our system. And so we feel like that's what they're here for. That's their job. And we talk about, you know, you mentioned that we're not experts on education per se. We're not political. You know, we don't know a lot of these things in a professional manner. That's part of that demoralization and that sense of, okay, well, someone else, the experts can handle this. The experts have got that, when really we're creatures of God. Like, God's made us for great purpose, and to keep belittling ourselves as if we're not capable because someone else is more capable. I mean, you would know how absurd that is, because God always picks those who don't think that they're right for the job, right? And those things are presented to us in ways that we get skilled up for that purpose and that job as we take action, and that's in us all, right? So all of that was really inspiring. For me, I did, like, there's lots of lessons that were learned even throughout the whole execution of it, the day of. I mean, we had a jam-packed schedule. And so for me, I was used to doing delegations at this point. I've done several on the board, and I get 10 minutes, right? And if I'm over, I'm cut off. So for me, it was like, oh, well, everyone will have their timers and everyone will be on. And that's something I overlooked, for sure. Another thing was that, what I didn't realize, I did realize it, but it wasn't in the forefront. When I mentioned, you know, for people to share, so we had the panelists, the whole vision was, you know, Dr. David Haskell was going to go up there. Jeff ended up going in there for some examples as well. That was a little bit last minute as well, but it was a great addition. but what I was thinking was they're going to kind of introduce the problem, right? That indoctrination versus education, understanding what that is. And then we're going to get into the options and just talk about like the solutions, right? Different solutions people can pick. But of course, when you talk about your story, everyone who is there as a panelist with these solutions and these different options, they all went into different options because of their discontentment with the publicly funded school system, right? So of course they're going to have more to share within their stories of how. So part of me just wanted, part of me felt like this wasn't meant to be bashing the publicly funded school system. We are here for truth, though, and let's talk about the truth, right? So there was that kind of aspect. I knew that most people who weren't already in some sort of alternative education, the majority to all of them probably weren't going to be taking their kids out of the school system after that event, right? Like that day after, their kid is still in the publicly funded school system, probably up until at least the end of this year, right? How many of them will be taking them out come the new year, the new school year? We don't know those numbers, and so we need to work with what we have. And I think that, you know, that advocacy within the school system is so important too. And so we've got a place there as well, and we've got a lot of options within that we could be doing that work as well. And to me, when we talk about being equitable for students, I mean, I could pull my kid out tomorrow. I could pull my kids out and I could say, have fun with your indoctrination centers. Peace out. I'm done. Right. I could do that. And there are several parents who could still do that. Now, do I think that this is bigger than that? Do I think this is bigger than just pulling my kids out? Yeah, I think it's a lot bigger than that. And it's not about leaving kids behind. So, I mean, I think for me, it's, that was very inspiring too, seeing how many people, and even the feedback of how many people want to be a part of that, of being able to make our education system better. And it doesn't need, I mean, for me, I'm always like, what is that going to look like, God? Like, it doesn't need to look one way or the other. If you were here in Waterloo and you kind of knew, you know, I guess how some people view me, they would probably guess that I want the publicly funded school system to burn to the ground. And it's not about that. It's not about that. If the publicly funded school system could work for our kids, I am happy to help make it work. I mean, we've done a lot of work there, though. We've done a lot of extending olive branches and warning and warning as in like, hey, we're going to leave if we don't change this, right? Like there won't be much left. I mean, we're already selling off schools, right? Like,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't need to look a particular way for me. The outcome just needs to be high quality education for my kids without indoctrinating them.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that, you know, we have spoken even since then with several families. And, you know, obviously, when we talk about publicly funded system, it's funded, right? So it doesn't take, our taxes go towards that. And so it doesn't take anything extra. It already gets automatically deducted from paychecks and things like, and taxes and things like that. But when it comes to alternatives right now, they are now something that we need to, one of the big issues I've spoken with parents is that now they have to start budgeting for those new options. And I know that after COVID and everything that's happened, a lot of people's financial situation changed for the worse. So a lot of parents are now feeling pressure on that. You know, their heart says, I want something better for my child, but then their bank account says, what can I do? Right. And I think that's why I'm starting at first, when we started School Pods Canada, we would hear a lot of questions like, well, where is there a pod available? You know, where can I sign up my child? You know, like it was treated almost like a public school system. But through a lot of education, Darryl and I was speaking to a lot of parents, the questions started changing into, how can I be involved? How can I make it more affordable? Like, what can I contribute that is not money wise, but my talents, so that I can make it work for our family? And I think this is where I like seeing the problem solving, because I don't want parents to say, oh, well, I don't have the finances to do either private school or even hire a teacher, so I'm just going to go with the alternative that's available and easier for me. And so I'm glad that people are starting to choose to do things and to realize, hey, just because I don't think I can afford this now doesn't mean that I can't come up with ways to do this. And of course, I'm seeing also a lot of parents coming together. I'm seeing a lot of the homeschool groups, parents starting to say, hey, can we get the kids together, maybe give them an experience together? And I love that is also coming up as well. And so people are starting to problem solve. And you know what? That's a good example to our children, because our children oftentimes, they haven't built resilience, when they're doing hard things.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're seeing, the parents go through tough decisions and tough things, they're starting to learn from us. And I think that's a wonderful opportunity for everyone.
They certainly don't get that in the publicly funded school system anymore, do they? It's all about easy. It's all about how can we make this feel good for you? Like if it's stretching them, if it's making them feel challenged and frustrated, then we need to stop. Like, let's do this so that you feel good about, like, you're going to feel really good when you go through your challenges. You're going to be really empowered and know that you can do hard things. Those are important lessons for us, for sure.
Yeah, and also there's the concept, and these are things that I've been trying to incorporate in pods here, but I think parents are starting to teach their kids too, which is this emotional intelligence. Like, just because something doesn't feel good doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's a growth process, the growth mindset concept, all these things. And I think what I'm seeing is actually right now, because there's such big changes have happened in our education system, that I think parents are learning and growing alongside with their children at the same time. And I think that's a beautiful thing for children to see, that just because you're an adult doesn't mean you've stopped learning and you know it all, and everything's set for your life. So I think they're wonderful opportunities. So when it comes to feedback, what have, I guess, the community members that did come, what have they shared in terms of, how has this impacted them? How has it kind of contributed to the decision-making process? Just what have you heard so far as a feedback?
Yeah, really great feedback. For the most part, it was all very positive. The constructive stuff is all fair, and it's subjective too, right? Because there's some people who they were very hungry for a public display of the problems, right? Like they knew about the problems and they wanted more people to know about the problems. And so some people were so pleased with us being able to elaborate on some of that a little bit more, because we haven't really been having the opportunity to do that in a public place. And while other people, they knew enough about the problems, and they wanted to spend more of the time together focused on the nitty-gritty of the solutions, because they're ready to move forward with a solution, right? And that's the thing that we all have to realize. We're all going to be coming in different places. Some people are still starting to learn about the problems, and the problems are not uncomfortable enough for them to get uncomfortable in the places where they're comfortable, right? So they still need that in order for them to have that sense of urgency and that desire to do something, right? That will to do something different. And then that will pushes us to knowing what's possible too, right? And then there's other people who are ready to go. They want to know about the nitty gritty about pods, right? I want to know, what's the logistics? How much time is this going to take? How much does it cost? Tell me all of the nitty gritty logistics. I want homeschooling. What does that look like? Where are my supports? What is that? How many hours of a day is it going to cost? Take for me as an individual? Do I do it myself? Do I kind of share the load with other homeschooling parents? Like all those nitty gritties. Some people were ready for that when they walked through the door, and that wasn't what the event was about. The event was about scratching the surface in terms of, here's a little bit about the problems, and now here are some options, and realizing that there is more than just the publicly funded school system. While the publicly funded school system is an option, there are also other options that you might want to start considering and taking. And that was part of the feedback too, was that some people had no idea. Some people had no idea there were alternatives. They knew there were private schools maybe, but they didn't know that there were groups of individuals. They didn't realize homeschooling has been on the rise. And, I think I shared that stat. To me, I learned a little bit more about homeschooling this past summer, and I was just floored at, like, what? I didn't think I would be someone who would be considering homeschooling, let alone excited about the thought of homeschooling, right? So I watched a few documentaries and read a couple books on it. And I spoke to some teachers currently in the publicly funded school system. I asked, how many hours, how many hours would I need for my sons? So I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old. And like, how much time do you think I'd need a day to cover what you guys are doing in 6 hours? And she said an hour or two.
Yeah.
And I was floored, right? Like, and then when you think about that, some people think of that as like, because firstly, people think of homeschooling as like, oh, well, I'd have to turn my living room into a school and I've got to be on for 6 hours of teacher. So I have to be a teacher for 6 hours. And then on top of that, I have my job and all of this stuff for the home and all of this stuff. And that's how we kind of think about it, when really it's like, no, a lot of the time, like teachers would tell you, most of the time at school is transitional, is behavior issues, is busy work while they're trying to get some work done with one-on-one with some children or a smaller group. There's busy work happening. And so for all of the work that they did that was necessary in that day would probably be about an hour or two. And when you think about that, you think about the grind that people are in, right? A society, parents, they work 9 to 5 plus hours plus commute or whatever it is. Then they're coming home. Some of them will try to make a dinner, a homemade dinner, right? They're going to be eating at some point. They're getting ready for the next day. They're waiting for Friday to come. They're waiting for the weekend, right? I can't wait until the weekend comes. Then you need to clean the house because it's been semi lived in, but in a rushing way. And so you don't really get that much time to live your lives, right? And so when you think about having the kids home and you do an hour or two, how much more time does that free up? You've got extra hands now to help tidy up, go do some fun activities outside, get more fresh air, just be, at play, having adults play a little bit more, like all of these things that people don't really realize. That what would life look like if we just gave ourselves that time to live, right? So
Right.
yeah, so there's all of that, right? And then take pods would make that maybe even easier, right? Depending on, and there's going to be different circumstances. Cost is an issue for some, time is an issue for others. Sometimes it's both, right? And so, but when you think about the things that you're kind of taking away, but replacing it with, like, it ends up evening out, right? Like, we're not meant to be slaves, and that's how we're living our lives most of the time, right?
Yeah.
God doesn't want that for us. So yeah, people are ready to learn more about taking action on on different means of education. You know, I think David Haskell did a beautiful job lifting up that stigma. I want to be careful when we, you know, this isn't about now coming out and being like, oh, homeschoolers are better students than public. Like, it's not about that, because that's what we heard, you know, growing up. That's the stigma that happened with so many parents. Like, oh, they won't, what if they don't get what they need? Like, what if they don't get into university, if they want to do university or college afterwards? Like, what if they're just not getting what they need, right? And that's a fear that good discerning parents will have. Like, those are questions that you'll be asking yourself, and that doubt will set in. And so all these years we've been told a story that the government knows better, the state knows better, you know, the experts know better for what our kids need. And so we've kind of sat back and allowed that to happen. And it's out of control now. It's absolutely out of control. The pendulum has swung all the way. And, you know, David Haskell did a beautiful job showing us the statistics that you actually don't need to fear those, that the kids are doing fine from homeschooling. And actually, studies show that they might be doing better, which, you know, isn't that surprising? I don't think that would be surprising for anyone, even those who are rooting for the publicly funded school system. Many of them they have discontentment with the academics portion of it, right? Like, it's just not providing for our kids anymore. It isn't serving them. And if a publicly funded school system is no longer serving the public,
Yeah.
like, you know, I keep on saying we've got a right to leave, and more so, I think we've got an obligation to, right? We've got an obligation to leave. If they're not going to listen, if they're not going to make the changes necessary, then we got to do what's best for our kids.
Yes. And I think another thing that has happened is, you know, I'm seeing a lot of posts and things like that. Oh, school doesn't teach, you know, like canning, you know, big thing. Like, school doesn't teach
practical life skills, right?
things, right? And I think, and many times I say, yes, a school doesn't teach that. But, you know, I remember in my younger years, I grew up in Eastern Europe. It was up to the family to teach that. The family has always, you know, in the past, the family has always believed that they're the ones who are supposed to be teaching their kids about these values and things like that. And like you said, the pendulum has swung so far that we've decided in our mind that we can't teach them anything because we're not experts in anything. Yes, you are. You're experts at life. You're experts at your life. And you know, that's, and the Bible talks about how the older are supposed to teach the younger and share that experience, you know, with younger people. And so I think it's a wonderful opportunity for parents to teach their own children, and to not to wait for the school to teach things, but to, you know, take that initiative. And so I think that's wonderful. And people are starting to kind of go in their heart. And it is true. I think the reason people are dissatisfied with the public school system is because they're finding that their values are not being heard, respected, reflected, I guess. And so, you know, but that's an opportunity for us to do it. Pardon?
Right, Lena? Like not only are they not being heard and respected, but they're actually being denounced. Like,
Yes.
you know, when we think about a secular system, I mean, let's put the publicly funded Catholic system aside, because it's still a publicly funded school system. Let's put that aside. But when we think of the public school, a secular or neutral, there really are denouncing. You're not supposed to, you know, promote any specific faiths, but you're also not supposed to demote or denounce them. And that's what's happening today. They're denouncing it. And with all of these talks of, you know, parental rights, to me, I mean, what a distraction. I mean, what a facade. Like, we shouldn't even need to have the conversation about parental rights. It is a given. I have a duty as a mother, period. You're not going to tell me what my rights are as a mother. Okay, there are laws and there is criminal actions that anyone's capable of doing, and it happens. And there are processes and procedures for that. Like, one of my mentors here in Waterloo region, you know, she made a great point about how we, before, when we agreed to having, you know, publicly funded school systems in the state and the government, yes, we've got parents who are lousy parents. We've got kids that are neglected. We've got, you know, there was the whole fear of, okay, now we're more industrialized, now we're, you know, more technical, all of these things. I can't provide that to my, like, I live on a farm, you know, I can give them those practical skills, but I can't teach them mathematics. I can't teach them literacy. I can't teach them, you know, technology and all of those things. And so, and people kind of had that consensus of, yes, we need something that's going to provide the education our kids require to thrive in this society that's growing and evolving. And absolutely, but there was never the question of the parents, and there was never the question of faith and God being the authority, right? And
Yeah.
so now we're living in a world where not only are people disrespecting the fact that people still abide by God being the authority, but they are trying to denounce it as if you are not educated if God is your authority, right? You don't,
Yeah.
you're doing something harmful if you believe in God, or you abide by the principles of the Bible, and that's something that's wild to me. That's something that's so apparent. You know, we don't talk about it enough about Satan doing work,
Yeah.
and he is at work, and he's working hard. And I mean, I think that even growing up, that's not something we never really talked about evil per se, like, you know,
Yeah.
and that it is apparent to me.
Well, I have to tell you that I wasn't a believer in God my entire life, mainly because I grew up in a communist society. And that view that now is coming to North America uh, was what steered me away from God, because the idea was that the people who believe in God are not educated people, they're not intellectual people, they're ignorant people. And so it's you know, it was okay for like the older, and the elderly were not respected, because it was like, oh well, the older, you know, women and men could believe in God, but the young generation, they should know better, they should be smarter than that. And it's a really sad reality, because the Bible says, like, I'm repeating this again, that we're to learn from the wisdom of our elderly, and that point of view is so harmful to us learning from the experience of those who have come before us. And the fact that believing in God is something like intellectually you're not, you know, up to par, you know, you're, and so, and this is what has come in here, like when you were describing, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm having flashbacks from my childhood, what I was told. And this is why I think now I'm more of an advocate for people to really pursue God and relationship with God, because anyone who talks about well-being understands that part of our well-being is having this spiritual fulfillment, and being denied that because it doesn't go with whatever the philosophy of the day is really harmful, like psychologically, emotionally, you know, to people. And I know I have heard recordings from Canadian schools where teachers would be actually speaking to kids that their parents are wrong in what they believe. They need to change their viewpoint. And this is where parents should be upset about the fact that the public education system, like you said, it's not only not serving, but actually speaking to their kids against their personal values. That's where we need to take a stand. Absolutely. And there should be no question.
Yeah.
um, and the fact that there's such a big talk in the different provincial governments about whether parents should be informed about things, whether parents should be involved in the decision-making process of a child. It is ridiculous.
It's enough to be like, we're done with this. We're done. Like, there's that is the what other red flags do you require when the government's telling you that it's okay to be keeping secrets from your parents? Like, it no. No,
Well,
thank you.
and that is where families, the breaking apart of families is being encouraged, and that's a very dangerous, because you know what, once the family is being kind of wedged and torn apart, the society is going to fail. So people who are propagating these philosophies are not understanding that that's going to bring to the breakdown of society. If you break down the family, you break down society. And that's why we're passionate about speaking to families about understanding that their children and their relationship with their children is the most important thing, and they shouldn't listen to anybody else when they says, no, you don't know anything. Yes, you do. You love your children. Like you said, there are exceptions, but this is where the importance of community comes in. And like you said, for us to know our neighbors, for us to care about our neighbors enough to offer a hand, because sometimes some parents are not good parents because of circumstances. There's just too much coming at them, and they're not able to do what is best at the time because they're trapped in circumstances. Who knows? Sometimes it's a choice and a decision, but that's why we believe in the education part. Parents need to be educated. So like you said, yes, we have to be aware of what the issues are, but then let's focus on what the solutions are. And anyone who's capable of doing something should be doing something. So, which leads me to the question. So, what do you see next now that there has like this great event happen in the Waterloo community? And even if you could give like some advice of other communities of what to do, but what, first of all, for your Waterloo region community, what is next steps you're thinking? And then what advice would you give other communities?
Yeah. So next steps are going to be, we're going to keep on checking with informing parents on what's going on. That's something that people still want more of. So we're going to be doing that. Understanding even ministry a little bit more, the ministry standards and how that plays a role in your schools. And then that would empower, parents to know what they can do within their schools a little bit better too. Do I talk to the teacher about this? Do I talk to the principal about this? Do I talk to the trustees about this? Do I go straight to Lecce about this? That type of thing. And Gillies actually is working on the erosion of family. She's working on a presentation on that. I'm really excited to know more about that. That's something that came up as well, is even just having a workshop of people understanding how hard people are working to break down the families. And so we touched upon that, right? But even when you think of publicly funded school systems and this age segregation, right? Like, when in life do you only hang out with people that's your age? Like, when you go into the workforce, there's all sorts of different ages around you. Your colleagues doing the same jobs are different ages. But we segregate the elderly from kids, and that has to do with that whole community breakdown again, right? When you think of the family unit, you think of statistics of who's doing well and who's doing poorly, and it has very little to do with your skin color, right? Which is what we're teaching our kids. It has very much to do with the support you have at home, the love you have at home, the family unit that you have, and that sense of community and belonging that you have. And so, yet we're breaking that down, saying that we're doing a better job for our kids, which is completely hypocritical. It's completely backwards. So we're going to be doing some of that. And then we're also going to be doing, I believe you guys are going to be coming back. We're going to get into more of the nitty gritties of how-tos. So for those who are ready, to do something different outside of the publicly funded school system, what does that look like? How much does it cost? How much time is it going to, that you're going to need, and all of that stuff. So go into the more, almost like a workshop, or a little bit more honed in to some of the topics that we brought up at the open house. And then also doing more like almost webinars in person when it works out, but helping people navigate, for us, like the Waterloo Region District School Board, the Waterloo Catholic District School Board, how to navigate the website, how to be a delegate, how to register to become a delegate, where to find your trustees' email addresses, like those kinds of things that you probably wouldn't know unless you had to do it, and make kind of streamline that for people, make it a little bit less scary going in front of the school board. It really isn't. I mean, it can be intimidating. Do you remember that? You know, they're supposed to be there to govern the school, and we're there to govern them to make sure that they're doing their job. And so that kind of thing. And so, yeah, lots of stuff happening. Oh, we're working, you know, for those who get to watch the replay, we had CCEM in there. For those of you who don't know, that's the Canadian Christian education movement, which is like, we've been working on alternative schools over here. And like I mentioned, we don't want it to be just another private school, right? We want an alternative system for anyone who wants to be out of the publicly funded school. Again, those who want to stay, and there's no judgment. But those who want out, like if their choice, like in a democratic society, you think about like how people are coerced into staying into this system that they don't want to be in because of the. If we could put $14,000 in everybody's pocket and they get to decide what, you know, like that's not equality. You know, this is communism. This is a monopoly on the system. And when people start realizing that they're actually stealing our money from us because we've said no to this, we've said no, and you still take our money and put it towards something that not only is it not working for my family, but I'm actually completely against what you're doing to our society. Like I am funding something that I'm morally not okay with. And that is theft. Like that's not okay. And so educating people on that as well is a big one. Voting is another one that we want people to understand more about the process. So still, you know, those info sessions, having those in person whenever possible, but then webinars when that's not possible, that sort of thing. Encouraging other people to kind of do the same thing. Like really, I mean, it's been working here. And I think, you know, the government's not coming to save us. This is going to be a movement. This is the movement of the people. And it has been even in biblical times, right? It's the people who come up and say, no way, I'm not doing this anymore. You have no, like I have dominion, right? You have no power over me. And that's how we were meant to live freely. Right. So, yeah.
And those of us who believe in God, it's, I think, and we do that, like at our home, we pray on weekly basis for the school systems, for the parents, for the family, because you know what, God has chosen people, just regular people, to do extraordinary things all throughout biblical history. That's so yes, as I'm listening to you, yes, we want to empower those regular families out there who don't think they can do much. You know, each one of us has so much value to add to our community, but we have to follow our heart. We have to understand that, you know, just loving our neighbor, what does that mean? You know, how do we, you know, take what we have to use it? And so what you're doing in the Waterloo region, I guess any region can do that. And like you said, it is not really socioeconomic kind of factors that can determine, but it's your passion for what you, you know, how much do you care about a change? How much do you want things to change? And as you were speaking, there's a saying, when the pain of changing is less than the pain of staying the same, is only when we are going to do a change. So in other words, if we are okay with where we're at, we will not be really driven to change, because change is always a difficult thing. And I think that's one message I'm hearing from you. There's always sacrifices. There's always uncomfortable moments when we're doing changes, when learning new things. But the moment we've come to the point where it's too painful to stay where we're at, I think we'll find our greatest inspiration to do changes. So what is one thing, because I know for School Pods Canada, one of the things I continually pray for is obviously God's favor, but for people to come together, because you know what? One person cannot do all the work that is
They're not
necessary.
meant to. No. Yeah. They're not meant to do it all, right? And we're not meant to speak to everyone either. You know, everyone's got their own way. Some people are going to be a little bit more aggressive about things. Other people are going to be more gentle, and we'll each one of us, all of our different flavors are going to impact and influence different people differently. And that's, you know, is, I think, as long as you are true to what you are being called to do, there's very little you could, there's very few that could do it wrong. Like you know, you just do what you're called to do. And of course we'll learn and we'll grow and we make mistakes. We're not perfect. But for the most part, just keep on doing it, because it's going to bring you to the next thing and the next person, and it's going to impact and ripple in ways that you could never imagine.
Yes. So knock on doors, and the ones that are meant to open will open. And we are looking forward to coming back to your next event in Waterloo region. And I think it's a wonderful idea to do those workshop type of information sessions, because now that people have gotten the general idea of what's available, they'll start developing ideas and probably choosing one path or another. So we want to encourage everyone of choosing that path, and so instead of having regrets, at least we need to try. We owe it to our children, right?
Yeah. Well, two things. So I don't know if I finished the CCEM thing, but if those who are watching or see the replay, he talks about, so Gord Stevenson, and he was talking about opening schools in existing spaces. And so that's another thing. And so and you know, churches are a great space for that, because they so often have, not all churches, but a lot of them already have a youth program and youth ministry happening. So they've got the classrooms already set up and all of that. So if there's some usage there, that if you're part of a congregation, then that's an avenue too. Then going to your leadership and saying, hey, can we utilize the space during the day? How much is it being utilized? And so there's that avenue. And then the other big thing that we're working on, and I encourage everyone to be working on it locally, is having the funds follow the students. Right. So putting that money back, or preventing it from being stolen. I used to say hashtag give me a refund, but now it's like hashtag stop stealing my money. Like, exactly. Just don't steal my money anymore, right? Like, so we're making sure that it's accessible. It's an actually democratic society, that people get a choice, and an equitable society where people are getting the education that they need to thrive. So that's another thing that I would encourage people to start thinking about in their own local communities too.
Well, thank you so much, Christina. We've come to the end of our time, and I hope we've inspired a lot of our listeners. And we will keep in touch, and we'll be updating our listeners of what happens next. So have a good evening, and thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.